Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the KIMBALL HOOKER Show. We're here in Los Gatos, Monte Serena, tuned in to KCAT Radio. We have our special guest here today, but before I even mention his name, I want to go over some of his credits. His credits include, just a short name, Whitney Houston, Michael Bolton, Huey Lewis and the News, Wayne Wallace, Bobby Kimball, Narada Michael Walden, Lenny Williams, and so many more. I mean, right now my mind is boggled just because I love the fact that he stays busy. He's always active. And, you know, a lot of times in this business, there's a lot of downtime that happens. Yes, but sir. This gentleman has kept it working, kept it going. And there's so many things we're going to go over and discuss today. My special guest, my friend, soon to be yours, Mr. Larry Batiste.
Thank you so much, man. It's so great to be here. I'm honored. I'm in the presence of greatness.
Oh my gosh, don't talk about that. I mean, I've been waiting for you to get here for so long, Larry, with so many things I want to go over because your milestone is, to me, you're a legend. Oh, honestly, man. Not a Bay legend, a legend.
I appreciate
just
that.
All across the board, you know.
You know, I'm just trying to feed people. You know,
we're gonna dive right in it though. We're fed, but we're gonna dive right in. For the people that don't understand and don't know, I want to just start. We can start from the beginning. And just, you know, because I don't want to go too far in the past, in the back, but take us back to the beginning of, like, how did your interest in music begin? How'd you get started?
Wow, I have so many, because I have like 15 jobs in the music business. So I have a lot of beginnings, you know, into the theater world, into the music world, into the vocal world, into the arranging, musical directing world. So I got a lot of beginnings. So I don't know where quite to start, but maybe I guess my first contact with music was I had this uncle who he was a saxophone player and he was in Duke Ellington band and Count Basie and stuff like that. But he died when I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
He died in his alcoholism. And my aunt, you know, at that time she thought, oh, music was evil, so I don't want any musical instruments in the house. So she gave the sax away and she gave different instruments away, and we got the piano.
Right.
So this piano was in our garage, and of course the clothes and everything got thrown on top of it, and no one had an interest in it. And so I think that was my very first contact with music, was I started to peel things off this piano and start playing around.
How old?
With the notes. I was about maybe 9.
Wow.
And, you know, and I began writing my own little songs. I'm going, okay, this note sounds good with this note. Wow, if I put this, oh man, this, oh, that's a chord.
Wow.
And then I'm going, okay, this chord sounds good when I go to this chord. You know what I mean? Before I knew it, I was put, and as a child, you know, music was always my best friend. You know, when things would happen or whatever, I would retreat to this garage and sit on this piano where nobody was interested in, and I would kind of like document my situation in a song, and then it was like medicine to me. Right. So I was healed, and I could go back into the world, you know, after that. So that was probably my first contact with music and songwriting. The song sucked, but
so you thought.
I got better as it went along.
Right.
But I think that was the first contact, and my first real instrument was in the 4th grade. I learned trombone.
Trombone.
So
that's your home instrument, right?
That
there.
was my first instrument, and that was my major in college.
Oh wow.
I was a trombone major.
Oh, got it. Okay. So was this passed down like from parental? I mean, was it something that, you know, you say, hey, I watched my Uncle Joe or something?
No. I was
self-taught?
No, I had a music teacher. You know, in the 4th grade, you know, you take this test to see if you have talent or whatever. And then I went in. They said, okay, I could take music, and so they said, okay, what you want to play? Like every other kid, I said drums.
Right.
They said, we have too much drummers, can't do that. I said, okay, guitar. Okay, bass, and everything I got shut down. She said, you got to play a horn. And she was kind of like a mean teacher.
Okay.
She goes like, okay, blah, 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 trombone. And she always landed on trombone. I couldn't remember any of the names of the other instruments. And so I said, okay, trombone. But, you know, that's how I became a trombone player. That's kind of sad. But I learned to love the instrument, the way it sounds, the roundness of the sound, the uniqueness of it, how I blended with the other horns.
Right.
All that's my first instrument was trombone.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So transition us back into, okay, so we're in the 4th grade. You learned the trombone. You're getting good at it. I know you're building some fans. I know you blowing that thing and getting good at it.
You know, I went on to high school and I was in a band and I did the battle of the bands with like.
What was that like?
That was great. Well, we had a band called the Soul Experience, and that's where I met my first group of buddies. And we had a battle of the bands at Castlemont High School,
Oakland.
where I went to school in Oakland. And then there was another competing band, and they had this guy, you know, playing James Brown, but you know, he was like me. He couldn't afford to have a saxophone, a Barry, and so he had a little bass clarinet. And so I ended up meeting that guy because it was so unique. And that guy's name is Clay Tobin Richardson.
Wow.
And so we was about 10 or 11 years old, and realized that I live in a part of Oakland called Brookfield, and he lived in a part called Sobrani Park, who wasn't too far away, and we became best friends. We were about 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
And he became my business partner in the 12th grade. We started a publishing company, and the rest is history. We've done so much work together.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you learned a lot from this person as well, too.
Oh, absolutely. We taught each other, you know, and, you know, so we learned, you know, of course, music and playing in bands, competing bands, then in bands together. And then we started, you know, 12th grade, you're under pressure. Okay, what are you going to do?
Right.
You're going to go to college, you're going to, you know, that kind of thing. So we had to figure out, you know, who was making money in the music business, because we knew a lot of great musicians who were broke.
Didn't want to be a part of that.
You know what I mean?
Right?
So we go, okay, who's really making money? So I said, you know, it's the producers, the songwriters, you know, the publishers and stuff like that. So we need to start a publishing company, start writing songs. So we figured that out. And then, so we did. We started a publishing company in the 12th grade.
Right.
And then we had to find a mentor, you know, and we had lots of mentors. And that's why probably to the day why I try to mentor so many people, because that's kind of help that I received. So, you know, so we had music mentors. We had a guy named Bill Bell.
Right.
Who taught at Alameda College and some other places. And, you know, in the 12th grade, he would say like, hey, do you have a tuxedo? We go, yeah. Well, okay, I want you to show up at such and such place, bring your horn and this and that and the other. And we show up and it's Billy Eckstein. And then it's Eartha Kitt, and then it's I'm going, wow, this is really in mentoring us in the way where he taught us is this is real,
right?
You know, you could do this. And then we had another guy on the vocal side. His name was Phil Reeder. You know, we had an ensemble in high school called the Castaliers, and you know, we went to Europe. We did all this type of stuff in the 12th grade.
Wow!
And so like this kind of taught us that this could be real. This is you know, you could fall in love with this. This would be great.
It can become something.
It becomes something. And
right.
Then on the mentoring side, when it came to business, we go, God, we're starting a publishing company. We have to know something about this. So we looked up who's the biggest lawyer in the Bay Area at this time. And at that time, it was the 70s. And there was a guy named Jeffrey Grobard. And at that time, he handled groups like Journey, Carlos Santana, Janis Joplin.
Wow.
It goes on like that. These are all huge groups.
Wow.
So we said, let's call him. So, you know, we called him, we made an appointment, and I put on my man's voice so he would think we were serious.
Right.
And we saved $125, and we said, we're going to make this appointment. We're going to go and talk to this attorney. And so he thought we were men. And when we walked in his place in Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, he looked at us and he kind of chuckled. And we had our briefcases and all that stuff. And he chuckled and he said, no, come in, sit down. And he was our business mentor. And so he told his secretary, hey, tell everybody I'm in meetings today, cancel everybody. This is a great, great man. And he spent the day talking to us about business, took us to lunch and came back and more, you know, how contracts work and
wow.
the things that need to be in the contracts and all that.
He didn't shoo you away. He took you serious.
He took it seriously. He said, you guys are really going to go somewhere. But that's why I think it's instilled in me to like, where do you start? You don't know anything. You got to start somewhere. You have to pay it forward. You got to do that. And so we did that. Now, at the end of that day, I said, well, sir, how much do we owe you? And he said, nah, that's okay. Just, I said, no, the 125 was burning my pocket.
Right.
So I said, no, we're prepared to pay you. He said, really? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, 7 hours times $375 an hour. I'm going like,
Wow. Yeah.
I had to clear my throat and take all that back, And so, on second thought, we'll take you up on your offer. But about once a month for about a year, he would say, okay, what you working on now? Let me see that contract.
Nice.
That kind of stuff. So it kind of taught me, what should be in agreements, how this whole thing works, and that whole thing.
Contracts.
So that was
laid out.
That's everything. So
wow.
Anyway, so mentors. And so that's really a big part of what I do.
Right. That's huge. That's really big, because right now we're in a place where, a lot of talent just, they don't have any direction.
Right.
Yes. And don't get me wrong, there's places that you can go get mentorship, you can go to YouTube and things like that, but that's not really personal,
Yeah, we all started this thing because we love music.
Right.
We're not thinking about business. We're not thinking about making a living and all that kind of stuff. So, it's so you but that's a reality. That's why we started this thing. Okay, now what? And so we went through several parts of our journey. Mm-hmm. There was a time where I was signed to a publisher in New York. Clay and we was in there, and the head guy comes in. Okay, this is the #1 record in the country right now. Write me one of these, that kind of thing. You do that for about 3 years, you realize that, this is not why I really started playing music. But I say every experience is a good experience, because what that taught me how to do is to dissect songs. Right. Okay, and learn formulas and all that kind of stuff. So like when that happens, when it comes down to business, like if you're doing a jingle for whoever and you have 2 hours to do it, you could do it. But so it's a good skill to have. So that was a good experience
for songwriting.
For songwriting. But I had to come back and stop doing that and go like, okay, let me come back to why I really started music in the first place, your love for music.
Right.
So
I want to ask you about Bill Summers and the Summer Heat.
Yes.
I want to talk about that.
Yes.
Like, how did that come? Because that was a huge song, and I believe it was 80, 81, something like that.
Yes, yeah. We had a big run with that group. Bill Summers is a world-class percussionist. And Bill, his beginnings were he did a lot of stuff before this big opportunity, but he did all the soundtrack work for the documentary Roots with Quincy Jones. Wow. And so, all the percussion work when he's running through the jungle and he's doing all that stuff, that's all Bill Summers, and so that's his background. And then he discovered this, he created the sound, doo-doo, that kind of
right.
That was all him. There was a original sound that he created. From that, he joined Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. Wow. And they had the big hit, all that. Then it was time for him to go on his own, and that's where Clay Tobin and I come into the picture.
Okay.
And so someone, maybe it was Bill Bell, told him about us, and so we got together and we produced maybe 4 or 5 albums together, one for Fantasy Records and the rest for MCA. And the second record we did with him was where Call It What You Want comes from, and that was like a top 10 hit. Right. But and it was a great experience. We wrote the songs and produced the records, and we had a good run. It was fun.
Loved it. I love seeing you guys. What was it like being on Soul Train? That's what I want to know. I looked up and I saw Larry, and I saw you with that horn, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Talk to us about that.
Oh man, it was just fun. It was just great. I couldn't believe I was going myself, because it's something that you see on TV all the time. And then there you are in LA, about to be on Soul Train. And so that was a great experience. I learned, how that whole series was put together in a weekend. So probably the most fun part about it was being able to hang with all the artists, because you might have 5 shows of people hanging out in the green room, and so it's like you're fans of these folks and you're meeting them and that kind of thing. Then you go to your segment and then you kind of hang out and wait. So it was really fun to do. Right.
Just being in that whole zone and meeting people that admired you and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm admiring, I'm the biggest fan person. It's like, right. I'm a fan of musicians and artists and writers. And
what was Don Cornelius like?
He was super cool. But he, for him, I think it was kind of like he'd done it so many times. He had the same, same thing that he did, the opening, same ending.
Right.
He was on automatic.
He was on automatic pilot. Yeah, it's just boom, boom.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was very cool. He was frosty.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, to be on a show like that and you have all the dancers, right? And was everything recorded live, or was it?
No, it was. We did it. We lip synced to our records.
You lip sync to the record.
Yeah.
See, people don't know stuff like that.
Well,
that's behind the scenes.
There's no time for you to do sound checks and be messing up and things going wrong and all that kind of stuff. So I guess our biggest challenge was to learn. Well, we knew our songs, but just to do that, and it was fun. It was easy.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So during that, what those I was like 81, right?
Yes, 81, 82
right.
at that time.
And you still have your own production going. You have your own music going.
Yeah, we had that, and then we started to write for other artists.
Okay.
So we wrote songs for the Jazz Band, and we wrote songs for different artists. I can't remember everybody now.
Right.
But we have over 300 songs out on different artists.
That's crazy. Oh, Narada Michael Walden. Now that's one of my favorites because he's a drummer.
Yes, yeah.
Talk to me about what was it like working with Narada Michael Walden.
Well, he's bad. I don't want to plug my book right now, but he is. I interview him in my book, and I've done work with him. He's got energy. His energy is just so crazy, and what I really learned from him, I call him a mentor as well, because I just learned how he knows how to get stuff out of the artist, how to make you perform, how to just make everything cool, and that's a good trick. Or a good skill, I should say.
Right.
But he knows how to make you comfortable and pull it on out of you. But he's really cool to work with, and really energetic, and he inspires me. Even when I've done stuff with him, even in my musical directing career, I've watched the way he put the people together and that stuff. He's an amazing cat. Wow,
that's amazing. Just to interact with people on that level.
Yes.
Because now we're talking Aretha Franklin.
Whitney,
right.
Starship, goes on to Mariah Carey, goes on and on and
That's
on.
legendary right there.
Legendary.
And yourself too, working with Whitney Houston as well.
Yeah.
What is that like?
Well, I never worked with her in the studio. I did background tracks, with her voice already on the track.
Right.
But it's amazing. And still, it's the gift that keeps on giving. There's one song that they did 10 years after she's passed. Last year, there was a hit called Higher Love.
Right.
And I'm on the original track of that. And then there's a guy named... can't think of his, but he's a DJ.
Okay.
And but he did a remix of that, and it became a hit last year, Higher Love, and it just went platinum a few months ago.
Oh wow!
So this is 10 years after her death.
Wow.
So it's amazing. So it's the gift that keeps giving.
Whitney, we miss you and we love you.
Yes, we do.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to take a short break right now.
You got it.
We're here with our special guest, Mr. Larry Batiste on KCAT Radio. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, Kimball Hooker Show, and we'll be right back.
Thank you to the City of Montecito for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montecito has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kimball Hooker Show. We're with our special guest, Mr. Larry Batiste on KCAT Radio. I just want to continue this interview. Tell us a little bit more about your experience with dealing with some of the Bay Area people, like any artist that you've dealt with on a situational situation where like they're in a studio recording.
Oh, wow. Bay Area artists?
Yeah, Bay Area artists.
We have some great talent here. Let me think. Wow, I can't think of any particular situations. Just people I've produced locally. in sessions. I've done a lot of session work with a lot of great people. You know, there's the Ace background singers, the Sakai and the Keita Germains and the Jeannie Tracy's, and I don't want to get in trouble by naming people, but you know, it's nothing like having a great blend and being in the studio with professionals.
Right.
You know. So I don't really want to name anybody, but
Sakai. Now I know Sakai.
You know Sakai?
Yes.
I've been doing
Train?
Yeah, a train.
Okay.
Yeah, Sakai and Nikita Germain, they're both from the Bay Area, and they perform with the group Train. I don't know if people are familiar with them.
We're gonna have them on our show.
Oh, really?
Yes, we are.
Oh, I'm part of their team.
Really?
They have a group aside from Train called La Femme Fatale.
Okay.
And when they write great songs, and they're produced by Sakai's husband, Kevin Smith.
Right.
And I managed Nikita Germain.
Okay.
And so we're kind of a team. We meet every Monday and we kind of think of a plan for them. They got a podcast. They got all these
nice.
great things coming up.
Got it.
And so it's great.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Grammys, because that's huge. That's huge. That's like my whole big thing right now, is knowing how to get involved. Some of the people that are listening, the artists that are listening right now.
Yes.
How does one actually become a Grammy nominee or subscribe to be a part of the Grammys?
Membership. Wow, it's deep, because I have a huge relationship with the Grammys. It's actually the company's called the Recording Academy.
Okay.
And I'm a current trustee with them, but I've been a trustee in the past, and I've been president of the San Francisco chapter a few times. And it's a great organization, especially because they recognize excellence in recording. And that's kind of like our organization to do. And we're doing a lot of reshaping now to get the voting right, you know, because it's a peer-to-peer organization, which means that producers vote for producers, songwriters for songwriters, singers for singers, and that kind of thing. So you have to have the right mix so the vote is intelligent and people know. So I be outreaching to folks, hey, you got a problem with that? Why don't you join and you can vote? And so you can vote in the R&B category, because a lot of times, you know, when the balance isn't so, then people start to vote for names and stuff. So that's a correction that we're trying to make.
Okay.
And that, like, you know, we have people who are experts in R&B voting R&B. People who are experts in rock voting rock. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so that's the change that's going on. But to become a member or a voting member, you basically have to have 6 releases released, physical releases.
Okay.
Or 12 digital releases.
Oh, 12 digital.
And this has to be released within the past 5 years.
Oh, within the last 5 years.
So what they're trying to do there is separate the hobbyist from the professional.
Right.
So you want people who are actually in the business to be voting on Grammys, because now anybody can make a record. You could be a dentist and get Pro Tools and make a record.
That's correct. You sure right about that. They do it all the time.
Yeah, those people shouldn't be voting on Grammys. So you really have to be in the business.
Active.
Be actively in the business. And so you need 2 letters of recommendation.
Okay.
And things like that. And then that's basically it, you know. And once you join, you have people recommend you. Then they have certain classes, you know, in terms of like class of 2022, class like that. Every June they invite a new class of people once you're vetted, and then you join. The membership is $100 a year.
Okay.
Once you're a voting member, then you vote, you submit your stuff, and if you are not a member, you could submit for other people who are not members.
Okay.
You know, and then you're invited to the shows and the events. So
I have a question for you, Larry. Now, I know you're involved with it, so I know you have to, you know, answer a certain way or whatever, but I have to say, is the Grammys really fair?
They are.
Is it really?
It really is.
It's really
and
just
another thing I have to say.
The voting and all that, the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's no favoritism.
There's no favoritism, you know, but, you know, and I'm not a spokesperson for the Grammys, so I can't speak officially for them, but I've been involved in so much. But the thing is, what it really is you have to join. You have to be a joiner. You can't sit on the sidelines and say, oh, no, that was crazy the way that happened.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so, but you have to be involved. And so if you're involved, you get a chance to vote. If you don't, if you're not voting, then your voice is not heard. Somebody else is voting, and so that's how it could go the other way.
No, I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to be a part of it to have a voice.
You have to be a joiner,
right?
And that's everything in life. You know, you have to be a part of it. You know, in order to have the resources,
right?
You know, something I always tell my kids, and something somebody told me, and that is, your network is your net worth.
Right.
You know, so things happen because you're there, because you're a part of it.
Right.
And so you have to know people to make it work. And
right.
That's, you know, mostly everything that's happened to me in my life, you know, with my gigs, with the, is because I knew somebody, because I volunteered with somebody.
Right.
You know, in my musical directing gig, I musical directed Grammy pre-show for 8 years. That came about because I was doing another show called the Tech Awards with NAMM. You know, if you're familiar,
the NAMM show.
With NAMM show.
Anaheim.
I musical direct that show for 27 years.
Oh my goodness.
And so while I was, and that, I'll back up. That show came about because I was volunteering with the Recording Academy. Mm-hmm. When I first joined the Academy, I would go to events and didn't see me. You know, I'd be the only black person in the room.
Right.
You know, I would go, all the events seemed to me were like rock events. And I love rock because, you know, my college, I did rock, I did classical, I did all this stuff.
Right.
And, but I never saw me. So I came to the board meeting and I said, why don't we produce something for the R&B community? And I chose publishing and songwriting because publishing information, copyrights and stuff is a thread that runs through all genres of music.
Right.
So I figured they might go for that. But I said, why don't we do something tailored for the R&B community? And like the room kind of went silent.
Hear the pin drop.
There's this one guy named Hillel Resner. Hillel Resner co-founded a magazine called Mix Magazine.
I heard of Mix Magazine. Huge.
They're the Bible for engineers and stuff. He says, hey, that's a great idea. And why don't I produce that event with you? So we're all doing this volunteer work. And so we produced the event. It was successful. It was during the 90s. And during that time, the hot groups were like Tony, In Vogue. So we had them as our guests. And they would critique songs and people would, you know, that whole thing.
Right.
We had food and stuff. It was sold out. And then the day after, he liked working with me so much and I liked working with him. He says, hey, I got this show called the Tech Awards. How about you be the musical director? Now, I didn't know what the Tech Awards was, but I understood it was a job.
Right.
So
right.
We went to lunch the next day and, you know, I'm looking at the script. I'm going, oh, that's a script? Yeah. And so it's Phil Spector and it's all these people, you know, David Letterman, Paul Schaefer, all this stuff. I said, they're going to be there? He go, yeah. So anyway, so I end up doing that show. And that's a story on itself because, you know, this guy from Oakland goes to New York, does a show. I don't know any musicians there, but I met this one guy named Tom Barney, a bass player. But Tom Barney, I met him in the Bay Area. He's playing with Luther Vandross at the Circle Star. Wow. I met him through a mutual friend. So I called Tom Barney, who's in New York. And at that time, he was musical directing Steely Dan. And so I said, could you put together a band for me? And he says, yes. So I get there, my rhythm section is Steely Dan. So I'm going, so this guy from Oakland shows up, you know, I got Steely Dan as my house band. And then I had another incident where there was another guy named Al Cooper who had called me, and that's a long story. I don't want to take out too much time, but anyway, I got him to sing. Mm-hmm. And anyway, rest is history. I've been doing the show for 27 years. But while I was doing that show, the Grammys were part sponsors and they were in the audience, you know, for years and years and years. And when they got ready to replace their musical director, Patrice Rushen.
Oh, wow.
They just called me up and said, hey, how would you like to produce would you like to MD the Grammy show? And so I said, hold on a second. I danced around the room for about 2 or 3 times. And I came back to the phone and said, yeah. So anyway, that's how but that's all behind, what a point I'm trying to make is that knowing somebody volunteering led to me knowing Hillel Resner, which led to the Tech Awards, which meant to when the Grammys needed somebody, they already knew my skill, right. They knew my talent, they knew my character. I was already a friend. Right. So before the announcement even went out that they were looking for somebody, they called me and asked me to do it.
You put yourself out there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and people saw you work. Like you said, your character, your personality was built up, your talent was there, you showed up, all of that.
You know, that whole thing. And then when I talked to the producer, he goes, hey, look, you know, the show's in LA, and I know you live in the Bay Area, you can't hire any of your friends. And I'm going, well, why? He says, well, because we're union, and we'd have to pay. We have to pay for their travel. We got to pay for hotels. By the time we do all that kind of stuff, we could hire 2 or 3 more people.
Right.
And so do you know any musicians in LA? And I said, yeah, the best musicians in LA are from the Bay Area.
Wow.
So I went and called my Escovedos and my Will Kennedy, and wow. And so put the band together, and so the rest is history.
Rest is history. Wow, you guys heard it, Mr. Larry Batiste. You guys heard it first. I gotta tell you, that's an amazing story. My heart is just like, that's crazy. I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanna talk to you, or I want you to talk to me a little bit about your book.
Oh, the book. Yeah, the book. I've been writing for about 7 years. And when I first got the book deal, I'm going, oh, I could do that in 6 months. I mean, but I forgot that life was still going on.
Life never stops.
Life never stops. So, I would work on the book for 6 months and I stopped for 6 months. And, because I'm doing stuff, I'm constantly working. So, the book came about because I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he says, you should write a book. I'm going, who would want to read my book? There's so many books about songwriting. Why did they want to read mine? He says, because you got a different perspective on things. I said, well, tell you what, why don't you teach? That's a whole nother thing. Mm-hmm. And he said, if you teach, you'll be in touch with kids, you'll be relevant, you find out where they're getting hung up, and you get material from the kids for your book to be, all that kind of stuff. So just to shut him up, I just said, yeah, okay. But the next day, I didn't know that he knew the head of the department at San Francisco State. And she calls me and she says, I understand you're interested in teaching. I go, I am.
Right.
So she said, yeah, well, his name is John Bendick. Yeah, well, John Bendick told me. I'm going, well. So anyway, just to save face and not make him look ridiculous, I said, yeah, I am. She said, well, why don't you come in and talk to me? So I've worked for myself all my life. I've never had a resume or none of that. So I put a resume together and all this. I was all stressed, and I get to her office and I put my resume in her desk, and she says, what's this? And I says, my resume. She said, I've already Googled you. When do you want to start? And wow. So she says, when do you want to start? What do you want to teach? You could teach anything. And so off the top of my head, I said, how about the art and business of songwriting? She said, that sounds great. Why don't you just do a curriculum and tell me when you want to start? And here we go. And so while I was teaching that course, I heard from the publisher, my publisher, says, we don't have that title. Why don't you write a couple of sample chapters and see how it goes? I wrote a couple of sample chapters and they signed me to a book deal. So I have a book deal with Oxford University Press, which is the biggest publisher in the world. Wow. And so I'm going, this is crazy, but it's all God.
That's all God. That's incredible. That's incredible.
It's all God. And it's, I'm kind of like going with the flow. So now I finished the book. And the book talks about, of course, songwriting, which is a no-brainer. That's things that all people do, but it's my philosophy. That I interview other songwriters. In the book, I interview Narada. I interview a guy named Peter Asher, who discovered James Taylor and the Beatles and stuff like that. I interview several R&B folks, Bonnie Hayes, was written for Bonnie Raitt. So I have several interviews in the books. I have other perspectives. And then I, talk about the business. I talk about copyrights and things like that, and things that people need to know, because, people usually, like, creating is the fun part. It's okay, now how do I make this make sense? And bottom line is, how do I get paid?
Right.
So that's what the book is about. And so I'm finished that. I'm just doing all the post work now, and hopefully it'll be out soon.
Is it what you thought it would be in terms of the creative process of putting everything together? Is it taking as long as you thought it would take?
Oh, no. I had no idea it was going to take this long, because I thought I could, but the part of it is because I'm living life,
right,
as I'm doing this book. That's part of it. And, I'm a big supporter of artists. I like to come out and encourage and support people. So I was doing that one night with a friend who promotes this artist named Trombone Shorty.
I know Trombone Shorty.
And so I worked with him on the Grammy show and stuff. And I was at his show, and he sits me next to this Asian lady. And after an hour, we start talking. She said, "What do you do?" And I tell her, I said, "What do you do?" She says, "I'm an author." I'm going, "Oh my God, I'm an inspiring author. What's your name?" She says, "Amy Tan." I'm going, "Oh my God, Amy Tan." She wrote the Joy Luck Club. And so I said, "Well, do you have any advice for me?" She says, "Yes. First of all, you should have your ass at home." Did this lady just tell me I need to have my ass at home?
And you don't even know this lady.
Because she seemed so proper. She just totally threw me. But that was her truth. She said, "Yeah." So I said, "Yeah, I need to really spend more time, working on this and kind of learning how to say no." And she kind of put me. So I consider her to be a mentor too.
Oh,
that kind of way. So.
Yeah, that's keep you grounded. Keep you grounded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Listen, we're gonna take a short break.
Yeah.
We're here on KCAT Radio with KIMBALL HOOKER Show with my special guest, Mr. Larry Batiste. I want you guys to subscribe and share and comment and make sure you get this thing out there to the world and everyone you know. Larry Batiste, thank you for being on our show. We'll be right back in a little bit. KIMBALL HOOKER Show.
Thank you to the Los Gatos Community Foundation for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. Because of groups like the Los Gatos Community Foundation, KCAT has been able to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the KIMBALL HOOKER Show. I'm KIMBALL HOOKER. I'm here with my special guest, Mr. Larry Batiste, and we're going to dive right back in it with, I want to know more about the Supernatural on Carlos Santana record.
Yeah, that was a great experience because, he's so eclectic and is so groovy and laid back, and tries to make everybody feel comfortable. But one thing I learned about Carlos during that process was we was recording, and then something technically went wrong with the studio. We had some downtime, and he began to show us his art. He's an artist, like Peter Escovedo and so many other people. He actually does portraits and things like that.
Oh.
And so I learned that he has an art collection and that whole thing, that whole other side of that. But we did that record, and everybody knows the history of that record. The first version sold 33 million copies.
Wow.
And or plus.
That's amazing.
And but I looked and looked and looked, and I realized I wasn't on that record, because that first version, because he did 25 tracks. And so he only released 12 or 13 tracks on the first version. But I didn't know what they planned to do was 10 years later, do a limited edition and add my tracks. And I didn't discover that till maybe a couple of years ago.
Oh.
And so I was Googling something, my name popped up, and Santana's name popped up next to it. That happens all the time where you do sessions and stuff, and people record lots of songs, and not all of them make the record.
Right,
so
that's true.
So I just blew it off like, okay, whatever. So I'm going, and then I went to another thing, and there's my name again with Carlos Santana. And then I went to allmusic.com, and there's my name again. I'm going like, well, what am I on?
Right, right.
So it was discovered and stuff, and so, but the whole just being a part of that, and then we reunited again in 2020, where we got together to do the inauguration for Mayor London Breed.
Right.
And we did that the first part of 2020, and he had some other singers come in along with his band, and we also backed Yolanda Adams.
Okay.
And that was part of the celebration for London Breed's inauguration. That was fun. We rehearsed and hung out and
That's
all that
amazing.
Kind of, and then sung behind Yolanda Adams.
Right. Just that alone is
oh my God.
What was that like?
It's crazy. Just cool. You know, we had, like I say, some of the Bay Area's best, singers and stuff. And she flew in, and there was weather problems or something, so she had missed her flight for the rehearsal.
Right.
So we just went and did it, for real.
Right.
For the first time seeing each other. So.
And it was live.
It was live. Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's my first experience with her musically. Now with my Grammy situation, we're both trustees.
Okay.
So I've been in the room with her and sat next to her, but never really performed with her. And she's just gracious and amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, back to the Carlos Santana, the Supernatural.
Yeah.
I want to know, what was it like actually working with him? To actually be able to, work. I won't say side by side, but even just to have your name on that type of situation where it's your name on that record.
Well, that feels good. It feels good. It's like, being on something that people recognize. Probably my first record that was kind of on that magnitude was Michael Bolton. I sing on a song called Time, Love, and Tenderness. And that album probably sold about 10 or 12 million or something like that. But being with Carlos in that room was very cool because it's free. He's a very free type guy, and he's got a vibe of where he wants your vocals to be. And then he just, I want vocals right here. You guys do your thing. And so we have to interpret that as, move along with the track, and somebody usually takes the lead in terms of directing. I don't know if I did it or somebody else did it, and you just kind of make up parts that go along with the track. And I'm asked to do that a lot because I do jingles,
right,
for people. And so sometimes people just say, okay, do what you do, that kind of thing, or it's a gospel thing, give me a gospel thing here or whatever. And so I'm kind of used to that. And so that's how it was like working with him.
So he gave you a lot of creative,
a lot of freedom,
a lot of
creative freedom.
That's amazing.
Really
That
cool.
Somebody, you wouldn't think someone of that magnitude would do that, because they're like they hone in on what they want, and they're a little bit of a control freak to get what they want.
The thing, I think musically, he was more like, if you're a musician, he definitely knows what he wants you to play.
Right.
This riff, that riff, this break, that whatever. So musically like that. When it comes to vocals, he's not so much of a vocal guy, so he just knows he wants them.
Right. Okay. So he's depending on you to kind of.
Right, exactly. I want him here, that kind of thing. And
right.
So
he depends on your artistic ability to be able to and he gives you that freedom.
I love that kind of freedom. Yeah, he does that.
Right.
So he's cool to work with. He's really laid back,
Right.
So it was easy.
Are there any other projects that you have coming up? Like, what are your current things that you're working on?
Well, besides the book, there's a group that I've been working with for the last 4 or 5 years called the Anthony Paul Soul Orchestra.
Okay.
And they had a great singer named Wee Willie Walker who passed away in 2019, unfortunately. But we had written an album that's tailor-made for him. We recorded the album in 3 days. We wrote the album over a year's time, but we did 14 songs in 3 days. He lives in Minneapolis. He went home after the recording and told his wife, honey, I think this is the greatest record I've ever made. She says, well, get some rest. He went to sleep and never woke up.
Oh my goodness.
But we have a great record. It's been great reviews. It came out July 16th of last year. It's been number 2, number 1, number 2, number 1 on all these blues charts. And I think it's a great record. So that's the group. And then we do this festival in Italy and Spain every summer. Now, we haven't done it the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but we're scheduled to do it this summer, 2022. And we've written new songs via Zoom during the pandemic, which is a whole nother experience. But that's a project that we have a new lead singer. And so I'm working on that project now to write a new record. And hopefully we'll go in the studio in the next few months and do that record. So I'm doing that.
Right.
I got other things. I got blues compilation song that has got about 35 artists on it. It's like a We Are the World.
Okay.
But it's blues. But all the benefits is feeding America. So it's Blues Against Hunger.
Oh.
And so all the proceeds go to,
nice.
to Feeding America. So that's the latest project.
You have to let us know when all this stuff hits the fan so we can come back here and promote that and give people the link so they can subscribe to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing too I want to touch on is because of the pandemic, how has that like affected your work and being able to stay busy and
I'm
do
busy.
music?
Yeah, I'm working because I sit on about 5 different boards, and so we can't physically meet. So we do this Zoom. I'm all zoomed out, but
Right.
we try to keep it moving because we still have to raise funds for our causes and stuff. So I'll do a lot of Zoom meetings and I've learned how to produce virtual events and things like that. In fact, I thought I had written the book a year ago, but when the pandemic came, I had to pull back the book to include producing virtual events.
Right.
So I had to learn something about it first.
Right.
And so that was a whole nother delay, but thank God, because if I hadn't have pulled back the book, it would have been obsolete, because
Right.
I'm talking in the book about developing your fan base and stuff like that. And it has stuff like, get the contacts for the mailing list and all that, but nothing about virtual events, nothing about remote stuff. And so thank God I was able to pull that book back and then learn something about that and produce some events through my organizations. And so I have a little thing about that now.
Right. That's amazing. Sherry, listen, I'm so just happy to have you here on our show.
Yeah.
And you're the best.
My
of the
pleasure.
best. I've been waiting for so long to have you on our show.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. And there's so many things that I know we have to do, like a part B or,
Yeah.
because there's so many other things I want to touch on.
I have so many worlds and so many different lives. It's crazy.
Right.
So we'll talk.
Larry, thank you so much for being on the Kimball Hooker Show here at KCAT Radio here in Montessorino and Los Gatos. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want you to like, comment, subscribe to our podcast, and make sure that you guys share this. We're trying to grow it big. Okay?
So honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Until next time, we'll see you then.
You got it.
You just heard the Kimball Hooker Show here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.